I'd like to welcome everybody to our EHSQ community discussion, and today we're going to be talking about OSHA's record keeping and anti-retaliation rule with our two community experts, Eric J. Conn and Lindsay DeSalvo. For those of you who don't know, my name is Tamara Paris, and I'm the EHSQ community manager. And if Eric, could you take a moment to introduce yourself for us today?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Tamara, for inviting us and organizing this event. I've been so pleased to watch this community grow and to participate in some very interesting discussions, and very pleased to be able to spearhead one of those discussions today. My name is Eric Conn. I'm one of the founding partners and chair of the National OSHA Workplace Safety Practice Group at Conn Maciel Carey. We're a U.S.-based law firm with offices around the country. I'm located in Washington, D.C., so I can keep an eye on my friends at the Department of Labor, but represent employers all over the country with respect to workplace safety and health, legal and regulatory matters. I work with employers to help manage inspections and investigations by OSHA, state OSHA programs, the EPA where there's an overlap with workplace safety, and other state and local agencies. We help manage enforcement actions, including the full range of litigation before the OSHA Review Commission, as well as criminal investigations and prosecutions related to worker safety matters. We also help clients develop compliant safety and health programs and audit those programs and assist with employee training on safety and health issues. We also provide advice and counsel to employees. I've been doing this practice really exclusively in the area of safety and health law for 17 years, including more than a decade practicing alongside the former first general counsel of the OSHA Review Commission. And I was very pleased to work at several big law firms focused on safety and health issues until 3 years ago when Lindsay, who's joining me for this presentation, and several others launched a new law firm, Conn Maciel Carey. And our firm is a boutique firm focused on workplace safety and health and labor and employment. And I'm pleased to be joined by Lindsay today, and I'll have her introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lindsay DeSalvo, and I am an associate at Conn Maciel Carey, working with Eric in the OSHA practice as well as in our firm's labor and employment practice. I generally represent employers in all aspects of the employment relationship, as well as in OSHA inspections and enforcement actions. I also counsel employers on safety and health policies and procedures, and work with employers to conduct privilege audits of their safety and health programs.
All right. Well, I think you've seen the title and maybe some description about our program today, but what we're going to be focused on is OSHA's new final rule, which they characterized as the improved tracking of workplace injuries and illnesses. You might know this rule more colloquially as the electronic injury and illness record keeping rule, or the electronic data submission rule. This is a new rule that was promulgated under the Obama administration's OSHA in the waning days of the administration, that would have the intent of having employers take what used to be historically in-house injury and illness data and produce it to OSHA with the intent perhaps by OSHA to publicize that data on a website. The rule also included elements related to anti-retaliation and policies and procedures that might have the effect of discouraging employees from reporting injuries to their employer. That's what the rule is about, and we're going to go through today, Lindsay and I, the detail of those two sides of the rule, the electronic data submission and the anti-retaliation elements of the rule. But it is worth noting up front, and we will talk about this in some detail, that the future of this rule is very much in question because of the transition from the Democratic administration, the Obama administration, to a Republican administration under new President Trump. This rule is moving forward right now. It's in effect right now, and the data submission elements, as Lindsay will talk about, will as of this moment are set to proceed, but there is some question as to, what this rule is going to look like in a few months, whether it exists at all, whether it is pared back, whether parts of it like the anti-retaliation elements go away or the publishing of the data goes away. So it's, really interesting time to be tracking issues like this, and certainly this is not the only OSHA rule and not the only executive agency rule that has an uncertain future. But we'll talk about today what the rule is, but also what we think might happen to the rule in the coming days. And I'm going to let Lindsay kick off the discussion, talking in particular about the electronic data submission elements of the rule, and then I'll come back in later and talk about the anti-retaliation elements after that.
Thank you, Eric. So we're going to take some time now to go through the specific provisions of the data submission rule, including who the rule applies to, how it applies, and how to determine whether you are an establishment to which it applies, as well as some of the criticisms that we've seen surrounding the rule. So this slide shows the major requirements of the new electronic submission rule. Specifically, the rule requires that establishments with 250 or more workers submit information from their 300 logs, 301 incident reports, and 300A annual summaries at the end of the record-keeping year. So in 2017, these employers, these size establishments, only actually have to submit the 300A summaries, but going forward, 2018, 2019, any establishment with 250 or more workers will have to submit all three, will have to submit data from all three of these forms. Additionally, the second major provision here is that any establishment with 20 or more workers in, quote, a high hazard industry would be required to submit the information from their 300A summaries annually, and this will also begin in 2017. So beyond these basic requirements, there are multiple qualifications to consider in determining whether a particular establishment has an obligation to submit its record-keeping data and what exactly it would be required to submit. So in the context of the second major provision that I just discussed, an employer must determine whether an individual establishment falls within a high hazard industry. So in defining what would be considered a high hazard industry under this particular rule, OSHA actually departed from its long-standing standard as to what it considers to be a high hazard industry. Specifically, in the electronic submission rule, OSHA has used a threshold industry DART rate, which is the injury rate calculated based on days away, job restriction, and job transfer of 2.0. So any industry with an average DART rate of 2.0 or higher has been included in the list of high hazard industries that was published along with the electronic submission rule. The way that this applies is if an employer's establishment falls into one of these industry classifications as provided on this list and has 20 or more employees, it will be required to submit 300A data even if that particular establishment has no injuries, had 0 injuries for the preceding year. So the key here is what industry each particular establishment falls into. Notably, the average national DART rate for all industries, so industries from those that are considered really low risk to industries that are considered really high risk across all industries, is 1.8. Therefore, OSHA has basically chosen to use the national DART rate across all industries to determine which types of employers should have to submit data pursuant to the data submission rule, which doesn't really seem to align with classifying such employers and such industries as high hazard. This is further amplified by the fact that OSHA's site-specific targeting inspection program, which also use the term high hazard industry to determine how to target OSHA's enforcement efforts in this program, used a threshold DART rate of 3.6 to classify an industry as high hazard. And this number, as you can see, is actually double what the national average is. So OSHA used a number that was double what the national average is in the past to establish an industry as high hazard, which seems to make a little bit more sense than using basically a number that is the national average rate. It's unclear why OSHA substantially lowered this threshold DART rate, as it doesn't seem to bring in an accurate representation of high hazard, and it does make this list over-inclusive.